Hello, this is Jen from Windrose Fiber Studio. Today we're going to crochet a one-sided miser's purse. This is a vintage reproduction of a drawstring coin purse first published in 1895. This pattern is kind of a wild ride, so come along with me and let's crochet. For today's miser's purse, I'll be using comfy in worsted weight. I have a 4mm crochet hook, a pair of scissors, a yarn needle, and a couple stitch markers handy. We're also going to be using either a swivel snap hook that's 1 inch wide, or you can use a closed ring or a split ring, but you do need a ring that will not allow your stitches to fall off. Here I have a couple of samples. If you choose to use a closed ring or a split ring, you can add a carabiner style snap hook to that ring in order to attach it to a backpack or a purse or a tote bag. So both a swivel snap hook or a ring are really versatile options. Miser's purses got their name because it takes a little extra time to get your coins out. This reminded people of the hoarding tendencies of a miser and thus the name. I personally love the safety aspect. Whatever you put into a miser's purse is never going to fall out. I'm currently showing beading thread and a beading needle because once we're done with our miser's purse, we'll be embellishing with beads. This is an opportunity to add your own personality to your finished project. I think I'm going to go with these colorful beads. They're just speaking to me today. I'll be using a snap hook today, and the project begins by attaching our working yarn to the hook. You can follow these same instructions if you're using a split ring. You can also choose just to work single crochets all the way around the ring. I'm beginning by joining my yarn to the snap hook with a single crochet, and then I'll work 7 more single crochets around the hook. We'll have a total of 8 single crochets. So you can see I'm just inserting my hook under the D-ring on the snap hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then yarn over, pull through 2. So we're just working around the middle of the snap hook, otherwise it's just your typical single crochet. The metal is a little slippery and your stitches will want to slide up and down on the metal, but just take your time and before you know it, you'll have 8 stitches. If you're enclosing a ring in single crochet, don't worry that you have more stitches on the ring. You'll just only be using 8 of the stitches that you're creating. When you're done, double check your stitch count. It's very important that you have 8 stitches on this snap hook. To finish setting up our project, we're going to chain 32. Make the first 14 chains either just your typical size or even a little bit smaller, and then after the first 14 chains, make your chains just a little bit bigger. We're going to be working into these chains, so you don't want them so tight that they're hard to work into. The first 14 chains become the drawstring, and the remaining chains create the foundation for row 1. You can see that I'm enlarging my chains just a little bit because I don't want the tension of my first row to be tighter than that of my last. Here's a look at our setup. We have 32 chains attached to the last single crochet on our snap hook. We are ready to dive into row 1. For row 1, we're going to single crochet in the second chain from the hook. You'll see that I'm choosing to work in the back bumps. If you like to work into the side of your chain like this, that's perfectly fine. I just like to work into the back bumps. And then you're going to also work a single crochet in each of the next 16 stitches. So altogether, we have a row of 17 single crochet. This is the beginning of row 1, and now we're going to attach that to the snap hook. First, we're going to chain 14. Try to keep the tension of your drawstring chains as even as possible. After you chain 14, you're going to join to the snap hook or the ring with a slip stitch in the single crochet just left of the first chain. Since we know we have 8 single crochets, you can count up to the 7th one and work your slip stitch in that single crochet. After you make that slip stitch, you're going to chain 14 again. This is your next drawstring. If the weight of the snap hook is bothersome as you crochet, it's really helpful to put a pillow in your lap. That way the snap hook can rest on the pillow and you can crochet with ease. Here I am finishing up that chain 14, and now I want to make sure that my work isn't twisted. Part of the reason why I refer to this pattern as a wild ride is because it does want to twist and turn. It can be so easy to get confused about which side is the right side, so you really want to take your time as you're working these rows to make sure that your work is not twisted. The other unusual thing about this pattern is each row will go back and forth. So notice we worked up that beginning chain, we made a drawstring, we worked a slip stitch to the snap hook, made another drawstring, and now we're working 17 stitches back down the row we just made. Then we're going to chain 1 and turn. You can think of it as working back and forth. I tend to think of it as working my way up and back down again. However you think of it, you're going to be making 2 passes for each row. I'm just finishing up row 1. And then if I stretch out my work, you can see we already have 3 drawstrings and we're ready to move on to row 2. First, let me do my chain 1 and turn. And once again, I'm going to take the time to make sure that there are no twists in my work. I've got my snap hook set up. I'm ready to work the next slip stitch at the end of the next drawstring. So I have everything set up the same way I had at the beginning of row 1. So for rows 2 through 5, we're going to single crochet in each of the next 17 stitches, and I'm going to speed up this part because you don't really need to see me work 17 single crochets. Well, I guess I am showing you just a bit faster. After these 17 single crochets, here's the last one. Now notice one change in our directions. Instead of chaining 14, we're going to chain 13. So this drawstring is just a tiny bit shorter, and that's because the ones in the middle don't need to be quite as long as the ones on either edge. Then we're going to join with a slip stitch in the single crochet just left of the previous chain. If you're counting your way over like I am, it'll be the 6th single crochet. So I'm just going to work a slip stitch in this stitch. Next, we'll work another chain 13. At this point, it's always helpful to lay out your work. Make sure that there are no twists there before you pick your work up, and then work your way back down 17 single crochets. At the end of this row, you'll chain 1 and turn. Rows 3, 4, and 5 are a repeat of row 2, so you're just going to do exactly what we just did for row 2. I will come back so we can have a look at our work once rows 2 through 5 are complete and before we carry on with row 6. I'm going to go ahead and time travel to the end of row 5. Let's have a look at our work. You can count your rows by counting drawstrings. Our first one is our beginning chain, and then row 1 has 2, and row 2 has 2, row 3, row 4, and here's row 5. We have 2 rows to go, 2 stitches left on our snap hook. So for row 6, we're going to chain 1 and turn. Actually, that's the end of row 5. And row 6 begins by working a single crochet in each of the next 17 stitches. Here's our 17th stitch, and now we're going to chain 13. And then we're going to join this in the next single crochet just to the left of our previous chain. There are only 2 single crochets left on the snap hook. So we're going to join with a slip stitch right here. And then in row 6, when we're going back down, we're actually going to chain 14. This is where the drawstrings get 1 stitch longer again as we're working the drawstrings on the other side of the purse. After we chain 14, carefully rotate our work and then work 17 single crochets back down the row we just made. Row 6 will end with a chain 1 and turn. Row 7 is our very last drawstring row. It begins the same way all of these rows have begun, by working a single crochet in each of the next 17 stitches. Then you'll chain 14 and join with a slip stitch to the single crochet. There's only 1 left, just to the left of the previous chain. So here we go. We're just going to join this. Remember, this was a standing single crochet, so if you pull on that beginning tail, it'll kind of stand up for you and make it easy for you to see where to place your hook. And then we can finish this slip stitch, and then we're going to chain 14 and work those 17 single crochets back down the row we just made. And then you can chain 1 and turn, and then go ahead and put a stitch marker in that last loop because we're going to have another look at our work. So here we have it. We have 7 rows, 2 drawstrings per row, means 14 plus our beginning drawstring from that beginning chain. So we should have a total of 15 drawstrings. Let me just stand up our purse for a moment. So if you recall, the 3 drawstrings on either end have 14 chains, making them just a tiny bit longer, and they do need that length. They have a little further to go. You can see that even more clearly when looking at a finished miser's purse. My yarn is behaving fairly well. Some yarns will really want to spiral up on you. For that reason, at this point, it's very helpful to steam your work. I'm just holding an iron over my work, maybe half an inch above it, and using the steam button. Then I will carefully take my fingers and flatten it out. I don't want to press my work with the iron. Be so careful here. Please don't burn yourself. But you can see what a huge difference just a little steam makes in relaxing these fibers. I'm also going to use this time to weave in my beginning tail. I'm just weaving it underneath all of those stitches at the base of those joining single crochets. I always make 3 passes when I'm weaving in a loose end, just to make sure that I have a very, very secure hold. I just said really, really and very, very, so I must be feeling a little extra, extra today. I will try to get a handle on that. I also want to point out that if you want your purse to be deeper, you can simply make more than 17 single crochets. You can extend this part of the bag. If you make a bigger bag, you might also want to make longer drawstrings. This bag could be easily customized to hold something like, say, your smartphone. With row 8, we'll be continuing to work on the body of the bag, and we're also going to start working on the front flap. Row 8 begins by working a single crochet in each of the next 17 stitches, and now it's time to watch very closely. I'm going to place a stitch marker in the 17th stitch so it's easy for me to locate. And now I'm going to chain 1. I'm going to lengthen the loop on my hook and take my hook out of that loop. Make sure your work is lying flat and that nothing is crossed or twisted. And then I'm going to take that chain on the very end, place it over the loop, and then put my loop back on the hook. Double check, be sure you're using that very end chain and that none of your chains are crossed. Your loop and hook should be on one side of the chain and your working yarn should be on the other. Next, chain 8. We will be working into these chains, so don't make them too tight. After you chain 8, carefully turn your work. And now you're going to work a single crochet in the second chain from the hook and in the next 6 chains. Once again, I'm working in the back bumps. You can work along the side of the chain. That's absolutely fine. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. That last back loop is right where the chain is located. It's creating that space for the chain. And now we're going to skip over the chain 1. Let's have a close look at it here. Let me hold it up so you can see. Here's the chain 1. We're going to skip over that and we're simply going to single crochet in the next 17 stitches, working back down that row of single crochets we just made. At the end of row 8, you'll chain 1 and turn. So you just created the beginning of the front flap. Here's a quick look at our work. It can start to feel a little confusing during this part. Stay with me. I'm going to walk you through it. So let's put our hook back in our loop, chain 1 and turn, and head into row 9. These are the instructions for rows 9 through 20. I'm going to show you a couple of rows and make sure you're comfortable before I leave you to do the rest on your own. Rows 9 through 20 are also worked up and down or back and forth, if you will, and it begins by working a single crochet in the next 17 stitches. Mark that 17th stitch. This isn't absolutely necessary, but it will make your life a little bit easier. Then you chain 1 And let's look at our work. So this is our first chain. We're going to select the next chain. Make sure none of your chains are crossed. We want the second chain in the row, and we're going to lift that up and over our flap. The flap is going to come through between the first chain and the second chain. And then you're going to single crochet in the next 7 stitches across that beginning flap. Then you'll chain 1 and turn, and now we're just going to reverse directions and work our way back down. You'll work a single crochet in each of the next 7 stitches. You're going to skip over the chain 1, and then you're going to single crochet in the next 17 stitches, chain 1 and turn. I'm really happy to be turning this into a video. You can follow the written directions, but it's just very reassuring to also be able to see it. Here's how our work is looking, but let's do another row or 2 together. So this is row 10. We're going to single crochet in the next 17 stitches. Go ahead and mark that 17th stitch. It just makes it a little bit easier to find. If you're feeling really confident, you can skip this. Then you're going to chain 1, and then you're going to take the next chain. So we have 2 so far worked into the flap. We're going to find the 3rd chain, and we're going to lift that up and over our flap. The flap comes through. Notice that we never took our yarn off of our hook. The loop stayed on the hook, and now we're just going to single crochet in the next 7 stitches. Then you'll chain 1 and turn. Working your way back down, you're going to single crochet in the next 7 stitches. And then you skip over that chain 1 and you work a single crochet in each of the next 17 stitches, chain 1 and turn. I truly believe that rows 8 and 9 have the most potential to feel confusing, and then once you get beyond those rows, it starts to make a little more sense and it starts to feel a little more comfortable. You are doing 2 things at once here. You're working your way around the body of the bag, and you're also creating the flap with the drawstrings integrated into your fabric. This is how your work should be positioned as you start each row. Let's take one more look at that chain over flap maneuver before I set you free to work through row 20. So I'm just starting the next row, and then I mark the 17th single crochet. I chain 1, I find the very next chain or drawstring, whichever way you like to think of it. It's both, it's a chain and a drawstring. Make sure you find the very next one. And then you just simply lift that chain over the flap, bring that flap through so you can work through those single crochets on the flap. Continue to follow the directions written above through row 20. Basically, you're just working your way across those chains or drawstrings until only one remains. I have just finished row 20, only one drawstring remains. So let's go ahead and finish off the body of the bag. For row 21, we're going to start the same way. We'll single crochet in each of the next 17 stitches. Mark the 17th stitch, chain 1, draw that last chain or drawstring over your flap, and then single crochet in the next 7 stitches. Chain 1 and turn, and now you're going to single crochet back down those 7 stitches. We're going to skip over the chain 1 space, but now it's time to join the 2 sides of the body together. I think it helps to go ahead and count up 17 stitches on that beginning chain and mark the 17th stitch, and that'll just be a nice guide for you as you join the 2 sides together. This is especially true because now I'm going to have you turn your work inside out. I want the seam for this join to be on the inside of our miser's purse. So I'm just carefully folding my work inside out. In goes the flap, in goes the snap hook. And now I can hold these 2 sides together. The very first stitch is going to go into those marked stitches. And then I can remove these stitch markers just to get them out of my way. So here's our first single crochet. And now just 16 more single crochets to go, working these 2 sides together. So I'm going to go into one side and then the corresponding stitch on the other side. And then I'll just work my way across and finish off my work. This is Editing Jen popping in to say I'm sorry for that background noise. There was some mystery machine making an annoying sound in my neighborhood. I promise it does go away. If we compare this miser's purse to a completed one, you can see that it's still looking a little wonky. We have some finishing work to do. We're going to be crocheting an edge that will bring the width of the flap together. And of course, we also still need to close up the bottom of our purse. Let's start by doing just that. So I have laid out my miser's purse. It's upside down. I have also evened it out so it's symmetrical. The drawstrings on either side are the same distance, or they're sort of coming in the same distance on either side. And I've kind of flattened out the bottom of the purse. I'm kind of tracing down that row that connects to the drawstring and marking those 2 rows just to give me a visual marker. We are going to be working through these end rows on both the front and back of the bag as we join the 2 sides together. First, I'm going to join my working yarn to the bag with a slip stitch at the corner. Then working through the first 2 end rows, I'm going to do a single crochet decrease. And now I'm going to work a single crochet in my marked stitch. Remember, I'm going through both layers of the purse. And now I'm working another decrease through the next 2 end rows. And now I'm going to work 1 single crochet in each of the next 10 end rows. If you've never heard the term end row, it really simply just means the end of that row of crochet. After the 10th stitch, I'm going to work another decrease. And this is going to bring us to our next stitch marker, and then I'm going to work a single crochet in that marked stitch. And now there's just 1 decrease left. This will give you a total of 16 stitches across the bottom of your miser's purse. Now let's take care of our flap. So I'm actually going to join with a single crochet decrease. Insert your hook in the first end row, yarn over, pull up a loop. Insert your hook in the next end row, yarn over, pull up a loop, then yarn over, pull through all the loops on your hook. And now I'm just skipping a row and working a single crochet in the next end row. I'm going to repeat this 10 times, working my way across the flap. And now I finish by working a single crochet decrease over the last 2 end rows. The flap has a total of 14 stitches across. Now it's time to give your miser's purse another good steam. Oh my goodness, look what a difference a little steam makes. And now I'm going to go ahead and weave in these loose ends. Now for some fun, let's embellish our miser's purse with beads. You can do this in any direction that your imagination takes you. I've just threaded my beading needle with some beading thread and tied a simple overhand knot on the end and trimmed off the excess thread. And now On the underside of the flap, I'm pulling that thread through and then just passing my needle through the thread to secure it to my bag. Now, I've done lots of different miser's purses, and kind of every time I do one, I finish them off a little differently. This time I decided to pass my needle back to the top of the end of the flap. I'm kind of working around that last row of single crochet. I'm threading 3 beads onto my thread and then working from the underside up. I'm passing my needle back through the flap. It's sort of working to wrap these beads around the end of that last row of single crochet, so that last edge of the flap. It's fun to pick out the different colors every time I go back in for more beads, and I really feel like these multicolored glass beads almost look like candy sprinkles on the end of my miser's purse. I'm knotting off my thread on the underside of the purse. You can see I just pass it through a little bit of yarn and then pass the needle through the loop created. I do that about 3 times and then trim off the excess thread. Here we have it, our finished miser's purse. This is definitely a more playful design. I'm going to snap it on to one of my favorite tote bags. This was given to me when I bought some perfume in Paris, so it's very sentimental. I can also pop some lip balm into my miser's purse. I live in the desert, so lip balm is an essential item for me. Here's a look at the magenta miser's purse that I embellished with just a few cute flower beads. In addition to purses, totes, and backpacks, I love just snapping a miser's purse onto a belt loop when I'm going out for a walk. I can put a little cash in here and maybe stop by a coffee shop. Maybe it'll carry my earbuds for me. If you're a woman, you know we don't get very much pocket room, especially not in a pair of shorts. So consider this an extra portable pocket. Here's a final look at our completed miser's purse. I hope you enjoyed this project. I hope it wasn't too confusing. You can probably see now why I called it a little bit of a wild ride, but it really is so satisfying in the end. Please hit like and subscribe so you don't miss my next tutorial. Thank you so much for watching today, and I'll see you next time.